Reinforcements have arrived!
Live-action adaptations of popular IP are everywhere right now. Minecraft, Avatar, Sonic, Disney's practically industrialized the process. And after the success of Barbie, Mattel's officially joined the game. With the pink powerhouse that was Greta Gerwig's billion-dollar blockbuster, they've announced a whole slate of toy-based films. 17 titles greenlit, with 45 reportedly in development. We're talking Hot Wheels, Polly Pocket, Uno, and yes, Thomas the Tank Engine. At one point, the Thomas film was set to be directed by Mark Forster, a name you might recognize from Finding Neverland, World War Z, Christopher Robin, and A Man Called Otto. But there haven't been any official updates since 2020. If you're unfamiliar with Thomas, or only know him from the memes and toy aisles, here's the short version. Thomas is a small blue steam engine who lives on an island called Sodor. The stories were originally written by the Reverend W. Awdry for his son in 1945. They follow the daily lives of real locomotives who just so happen to talk. It's not epic or high concept, but simple doesn't mean shallow. Here's the central question. How do you turn modest, working-class locomotives into a blockbuster tentpole? Adapting Thomas for the big screen isn't just about updating the look or modernizing the tone. It requires understanding what makes it work. The deeper mechanics, both literal and emotional, that have kept this little blue engine chugging along for 80 years. And if you don't get those mechanics right, things tend to derail fast. This isn't Thomas's first trip to the box office. In 2000, there was Thomas and the Magic Railroad, written and directed by Britt Allcroft. It wasn't exactly a smash hit. The film confused longtime fans with magical elements and American settings. It reframed Thomas as a magical toy living in a parallel dimension. The trains moved on their own, and the humans were pulled in from another world. While it has a cult following, it ultimately ran against the grain of what Thomas is. About 10 years later, another attempt quietly entered development with Shane Acker attached. His version was reportedly set during World War II, with a darker tone and a high fantasy twist. Again, it seems Thomas was removed from reality, placed in a magical other world. Both of these efforts failed. One publicly, one before the cameras rolled, but they failed for the same reason. They turned Thomas into something he's not. Thomas isn't about magic. He's not a toy that springs to life when no one's looking. He's a steam engine on a fictional British island that runs like a real one. The world of Thomas has rules. The engines need coal, water. They live by timetables. They break down and they get repaired. It's whimsical, yes, but not fantasy. Realism is baked into the premise. And with realism comes a big narrative challenge. Steam engines don't drive themselves. They need two people, a driver and a fireman. One feeds the fire, the other controls the throttle and brakes. Without them, the engine doesn't move. From a screenwriting perspective, that's tricky. John August and Aline Brosh McKenna talk about character agency as pulling the levers of the story. With humans, that's easy. Our choices move the plot forward. But for Thomas and his friends, someone else is literally pulling the levers. So in adaptations, the easy fix has always been, what if the trains just drive themselves?
Driver says I don't need him now. Don't be so daft, snorted Percy.
That simplifies the storytelling, but breaks something important. Because once a train can do whatever it wants, it stops being a train. It becomes a character shaped like a train, without the very mechanics that made the original stories compelling. That's a fundamental misunderstanding. The engines in Thomas aren't just people on wheels. They're machines we personify and project onto. They express emotions as engines. When an engine hisses, it's literal. When an old one groans, it's mechanical. This isn't just clever writing, it's where the real magic comes from. We do this with objects all the time. An old pickup that sputters to life, a stubborn lawnmower, a bike that wobbles at high speed. These aren't characters in spite of being machines, they're characters because of it. That's what makes Thomas special, and also what makes him difficult to adapt. But the solution isn't to rewrite the rules, it's to lean into them. You just have to work a little harder. Let's talk about Barbie. Mattel absolutely knocked it out of the park. The film could have easily been a hollow, merch-first cash grab, but instead, it had vision, a voice. This was thanks to Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. It understood what Barbie meant to people and leaned into the absurd, sincere, and existential. Part of that success came from understanding play patterns. Kevin McKeon, Mattel Films' VP of Production, explains how the company approaches adaptation.
Well, I think the first and foremost, in terms of approaching these IP, whether they're just strictly IP in terms of story or mythology, or they're IP like Barbie, where they're a toy that exists, I think you have to really adhere to the inherent play pattern of the toy, that you capture what they remember about the IP. And then going from there, it's like taking risks creatively. I think Barbie was a risk.
They don't just ask, what story can we tell? They ask, how do people play with this? For Barbie, that means imagination, identity, reinvention. Barbie can be anyone. A doctor, a dolphin trainer, the president. That gave Gerwig the freedom to explore purpose and personhood through a plastic lens. But Thomas doesn't work that way. Barbie is a blank canvas. Thomas is a clockwork world. The play pattern isn't about self-expression, it's about systems, tracks and signals, timetables, jobs. You don't play, what if Thomas was a superhero? You play, can Thomas get his train up Gordon's Hill? It's not about who Thomas can be, it's about what he's built to do. You play with Thomas the way you play with model railways, to bring something heavy, real, and orderly to life. That's what hooks kids. That's what fosters obsession, and that's what hooked me. As a kid, I took my Thomas toys outside into the dirt and the sand. I'd recreate scenes like Thomas getting covered in coal, Percy braving a flooded track, or bridges collapsing. It was kinetic, tactile, real-world physics scaled down to my hands. Thomas episodes aren't about boundless imagination. They're about limits. You can't just turn around. You can't leave the rails. You can't always go where you want. And when things go wrong, it's usually because someone didn't follow the rules. This isn't just storytelling preference. For many fans, especially autistic fans, this structure is the appeal. The world has rules. Roles are consistent. Engines are rewarded for good work. When the rules are broken, consequences follow, but the world remains logical and fair. If Barbie worked because it honored how people play with Barbie, then Thomas demands the same respect. Because kids don't love Thomas for what he represents. They love him for the signals, buffers, the sheds, and most importantly, the characters that live inside them. After all, the books were successful long before there were toys.
Thomas is not a toy.
As a working artist, animator, and animation professor, I figured I had nothing to lose by pitching myself as a creative resource. A year and a half ago, I did just that. Now, I know vying for a job that isn't being advertised isn't exactly standard, but I wouldn't have pursued it if I didn't believe I could add something valuable. I'd already worked for Mattel once.
You think he's got what it takes?
Mattel Films, as a division, doesn't have a website or public contact info, so there weren't any proper channels to go through. I sent cold emails to every creative producer I could find.
Hi.
Predictably, no response. So I tried the back door. The film was being produced through Mark Forster's company, Two Ducks Squared. This time, I sent a physical letter. You might be wondering, why was this so important to me? Because, as a kid, Thomas was a lifeline. I dealt with a parent battling cancer, another who struggled with alcoholism, domestic violence, foster care, and then cancer again. These stories brought me comfort in difficult times. I want Thomas to continue being a safe place for the next generation, a place built by people who care.
I want to be a part of the people that make meaning.
Children's media today is increasingly profit-driven and attention-hungry. It prioritizes clicks over craft. I find that deeply irresponsible. This isn't just a tentpole. This matters. I never got any replies. One concern I'd hoped to voice was about the human characters in a feature adaptation. In many live-action versions of IP, the characters get paired with some generic human who acts as an audience access point. Usually the IP character ends up in the real world, or the human enters the IP world and needs to find their way home. It's formulaic, it's tired, and it doesn't fit Thomas. Sodor is already meant to exist in the real world. The Queen of England even visited during her tour of the Commonwealth in 1953. In Barbie, the humans exist mostly to frame Barbie's story. They're access points for the audience, but they're thinly drawn. In Christopher Robin, the humans are the story. The IP characters become symbolic of the protagonist's emotional state, but they barely get to be full characters with arcs themselves. Neither of these models work for Thomas, because the trains aren't metaphors. They're the stars, but they still depend on people. The key isn't sidelining humans, it's using the ones that already exist. The hats, the drivers, the signalmen. Some of the funniest moments in the original series come from the humans.
The station master was furious. His wife picked up her plate. "You miserable engine," she scolded. "Just look what you've done to our breakfast. Now I shall have to cook some more." She banged the door. More pasta fell.
The relationship between an engine and its crew is the bridge between man and machine. That's where the storytelling lives. There's already precedent. The Brave Locomotive, or How to Train Your Dragon, which structurally is a movie about bonding with something powerful, misunderstood, and not entirely in your control. Trains are iron horses, fire-breathing creatures with spirits all their own. You don't need to rip Thomas out of Sodor. Sodor is already magical. With care, it's visually rich and tonally flexible. I have a lot of appreciation for the efforts of the teams that brought Thomas into CGI, but it never quite captured the magic of the art direction in the original model series. Visual wonder cannot be underestimated. Give us a stylized Sodor that feels physical, whimsical but grounded. Thomas is also a period piece. That matters. There's wonder in old things. In real life, people line up for hours just to see a glimpse of a steam engine in motion, a living relic, a ghost that breathes. There is so much potential here for a story that's not just successful, but cherished. But the people making it need to understand what they're adapting. Thomas has a legacy of creators who weren't just talented, but passionate. Sometimes, a job is just a job, but not this one. I know I would treat it like a dream come true.